Greetings, fellow conquerors, and welcome. This is Darkfire Slide, and in today's video, I'm going to attempt to talk about the differences between religious and humanist ideas. Mostly because, first of all, somebody in my quality versus quantity video asked, what the differences were, and also because I wanted to make this as like a guide to help people understand when they should choose one over the other, because they are similar idea groups, but they have two different functions, if that makes sense. So, without further, let's just get right into it and look directly at, first of all, what each idea group does, and also, we'll start with that and then go into the discussion of when you should take one over the other. So, first of all, let's talk about humanist ideas, and the general gist of humanist ideas is that it stops rebellions. That is the primary thing that it does. But let's look at its overall effects. So, first of all, we have tolerance, which gives religious unity plus 25%, which means that if, for example, you have like 200 development and 150 of that development is Catholic and the other 50 is Sunni, then your religious unity will still be at 100%, which means that your national unrest will not go up, your stability costs will not go up, and your corruption will not go up from a lack of religious unity. So it's very nice, as you can see. For larger empires that have a unified, for the most part, religion, expanding into new religious areas, it's very useful for that exact purpose. Alright, next idea. Next we have local traditions, which gives national unrest -2. And what this does is it's going to lower the unrest in every province by -2 in the entire empire. So, as we can see here in this unrest here, we've got negative 10.7, which is, in part, we've taken religious ideas here in this, which is going to raise tolerance of the true faith, which we'll talk about later. And but for example, in this specific case, if we had that bonus right now, it would be at negative 12.7 for this province, which means we could actually lower. In fact, right now we could even lower autonomy manually, and the unrest would still be at only be at negative 0.7, which means the rebellion wouldn't even happen. So very useful in that regard as well. It also helps stop rebellions from happening in the first place. Alright, next we have ecumenism, which gives tolerance of heretics +3. And what does that do? Okay, so in the religion, screen, we have three different tolerances. You have your tolerance of the true faith, which is your primary faith, the faith you actually worship. You have tolerance of heretics, which is other religions in your group, and tolerance of heathens, which is religions outside of your religious group. So, when you take ecumenism, your tolerance of heretics goes up by 3. Now, what does tolerance do? So, we have tolerance of the true faith of 8, which means that any province that has the true faith in it is going to have a -8 to unrest, which is very strong, which is very good. But as you can see, we have our tolerance of heretics is -3, which means that any province that has this is going to obviously have -3 or +3 to unrest, which is going to be an issue and cause more rebellions, or even cause like a second rebel cycle. Which, kind of sucks. And then tolerance of heathens works the same way. If your tolerance is positive, it lowers unrest. If which is a good thing, which is why it's green. And if your tolerance is negative, that means it raises unrest, which is a bad thing and causes rebels. And let's see. Next, we have indirect rule, which gives years of separatism -10. Now, what does that do? Now, anytime you capture a new province, you have, I believe it's 30 years of separatism. So for 30 years, you're getting a negative modifier to your province. Let's see if I can find one here that has it. Yeah, so, and what that equates to is a +15 to unrest, which is quite a hefty amount. So what this idea does is, first of all, it lowers the amount of time that it actually lasts, from 30 years down to 20 years, and it lowers the unrest by 5. So instead of getting, +15 on every new province, instead it's going to be +10, which is extremely powerful regardless of who you use it for, and can often stop rebels from firing, even in completely new provinces, especially once you finish the idea group. Next we have cultural ties, which lowers the accepted culture threshold. And let me see if I can find it real quick here. Yeah, so it's if a culture's local development is at least 20% of our core's total development, then it will become an accepted culture. Which means that basically, if you take this idea, then if I'm understanding it correctly, because it's a little bit, it's paradox math. If you can get this, means that any culture that is 10% of our total development rather than 20%, then it is going to become an accepted culture, which means that you no longer take these nasty, unaccepted culture penalties. Now, this idea is really strong as well, but it is less good if you are a republic, for example, that has Republican cultural sufferance. Next we have benevolence, which is better relations over time plus 30%, which is very good for one primary purpose, which is lowering aggressive expansion that you get with other nations. So that's something to keep in mind when you get that. And any other time you take a relations hit for whatever reason, that's going to help you out there. Alright, next we've got humanist tolerance, which raises tolerance of heathens, which, as we've discussed, is like tolerance of heretics, raising tolerance of heretics. But I'm fairly certain that basically there are very few ways to raise tolerance of heathens. There are a lot of ways to raise tolerance of heretics, but not tolerance of heathens. So this is a very powerful idea, especially if you're expanding, like for example in this instance, into a lot of Muslim land when you yourself are Christian. And last but not least, when you finish Humanist Ideas, you get idea cost minus 10%. I'm not going to be going into policies on this video, though both of these idea groups have very strong policies that work in different ways. So look into those when you're considering these. Alright, now let's talk about religious ideas. So here's kind of the contrast to humanist. You can take both, but ideally you kind of don't want to, and we'll kind of discuss why. So religious ideas, this is arguably the best idea in the entire group, so you don't have to get through the entire idea group for it to be good. Though the religious unity from humanist is good as well. The first idea of religious ideas is called Deus Vult, and what this does is it gives you a casus belli against basically anybody that is not your religion, that is not your exact religion. If you're a Catholic and you find someone who is Reformed, for example, or in this case Orthodox, then you have a casus belli on them, just permanently. And the best part is you don't even need claims, and whenever you take unclaimed land in a holy war, then you don't have to deal with, let's see, what was it again? Yeah, when you do that, you don't have to deal with claims. So if you don't have claims on land, you don't have to pay Diplo for them in that war, which is really powerful. It can really help you save a lot of Diplo points as you take land from your enemies. So yeah, Deus Vult, very powerful, very strong idea. Arguably, if you only got this out of the religious idea group, it would still be worth taking. That's how powerful it is. It's like having imperialism before imperialism. However, if you are in an area that is landlocked with nothing but Catholic nations or nothing but Sunni nations, it is not very good, because you don't get a casus belli out of it. Which makes the rest of the idea group, in my opinion, not as strong, and we'll talk about why. So next we have missionary schools, which gives you +1 missionaries, which is really strong for converting provinces and nothing else. So as you're taking lands from heathens and heretics, you can convert it, which is good because it lowers unrest and it raises the amount of money you get from it. As well, you cannot convert a province, you cannot convert a province's culture that, does not have your religion. Which is, really important if you want to convert cultures and get more out of your provinces by spending diplomatic points. Next we have church attendance duty. We have stability cost minus 25%. Now, it's not bad. It really isn't. It'll save you some points, especially if you're like a monarchy or something, or if you're just in a bad spot and you keep getting those events. And it can kind of make up for a lack of religious unity if you don't have it, because lack of religious unity raises stability cost. So that kind of counteracts that, which is nice. But apart from that, not necessarily great. It'll save you some admin points, but not a lot. Alright, next we have a very strong idea. We have missionary strength at +3%, divine supremacy. And this is really strong because it lets you convert provinces that you normally would not otherwise be able to. For example, a lot of Sunni provinces, well, all Muslim provinces have a basically a +2 resistance to the effective percentage. Like if we look here, yeah, like Sunni is a -2% to the overall effectiveness of missionaries in a province. So this can really help overcome that, or at the very least, it makes conversions go much more quickly. So a very strong idea, and goes in line with the idea of attacking people who are not your religion, and then subsequently converting them. Alright, now next we have devoutness, which gives tolerance of the true faith +1, which is, as we've discussed, would lower unrest by 1 for provinces that have your true faith. And as well, for theocracies, it raises yearly devotion, and if you're Catholic, it gives you yearly papal influence. I believe it also gives church power if you're Protestant. And yeah, this is a nice idea. It's not amazing, but it is nice. I will say that much about it. Next we have religious tradition, which is yearly prestige +1, which is good. Yearly prestige +1 is really nice, and if we look, for example, at the bonuses of having high prestige, you get more trade power, morale of armies and navies, mercenary cost goes down, spy detection goes up, improved relations goes up, you get better relations over time, and aggressive expansion impact goes down as well. So a lot of very nice bonuses from this, and this is a really good idea. And lastly, we have Inquisition, which is missionary strength versus heretics +2. Now, depending on where you are in the world, this can be very strong. For example, if you're trying to convert Shia provinces as a Sunni nation, then this can be really helpful because Shia provinces are hard to convert in the first place. If you're in Europe, though, and you're converting Reformed or Protestant provinces as a Catholic, for example, the Christian religion is not very hard to convert. So, it's nice, but it's not great. And then lastly, we get culture conversion cost -25%, which also goes in line with the rest of the idea group, which is quite nice. If you like to culture convert, go ahead by all means. It's kind of an alternative to the accepted cultures that we find in the for example, in Humanist. So, when should you take one over the other? Well, I've touched on it a little bit as I've discussed each of these idea groups, and I'll go more into detail now. So, when should you take one over the other? First of all, I don't want to say that either one of these is better than the other. I personally prefer Humanist because, regardless of where you are, not having rebels is always a good thing, and the better relations over time, I find, is extremely useful. And the years of separatism reduction means that you're not going to have, separatists that often, if ever. Which is, in my opinion, really, really good. And the idea cost reduction is also quite strong. Now, that being said, in this run in particular, I took religious ideas, and I actually started this run as the Knights, right here in Rhodes. And because I started as the Knights, all the surrounding land was, Sunni. It was not my religion, because I started out Catholic. Which means that I was able to basically declare war whenever a nation sprouted up that wasn't Catholic. I could just attack them immediately without fabricating a claim, and that was really useful for just rapid expansion and exploiting people who got into bad situations, essentially. So basically it comes down to, first of all, how many people of the wrong religion are you surrounded by? For example, if it's just one person that has a different idea group, or a different religion than you, and it's just going to be a little bit of land, then it's not really a big deal, and you should probably just take Humanist because it's a small part of your empire. If, on the other hand, if you are Russia, for example, Russia's a great person to take religious ideas because almost nobody that is Orthodox ever makes it bigger than, these tiny nations that start out near the Ottomans. So, taking religious ideas as a nation, as a rare religion especially, is really powerful, or as a nation that happens to be on the borderline of where the two major divides are in religions. Otherwise, if you're looking to reduce your rebel problems, I generally find that Humanist is a much stronger tree, and as well, Humanist has the added benefit of lowering idea costs, which is going to make it, especially if you take it as your first idea group, is especially strong. So yeah, and to further go into, for example, tolerance, like, your tolerance of the true faith is not going to be as high if you're Humanist, which means, for example, if you get into a disaster where it raises your unrest by just an extreme amount, then you're not really going to be in that great of a position, except that Humanist gets local national unrest -2, so it kind of counteracts it. And yeah, so for stopping rebels, Humanist is basically the best option available to you. And overall, I would argue that Humanist is better, just because no matter who you're playing as, unless you're playing a tall nation, if you're playing tall, then this is not relevant. But if you're playing a nation that expands a lot and fights in a lot of wars, the unrest reduction, the tolerance of heretics, and the years of separatism reduction, as well as the accepted culture threshold, and better relations over time even, as well as, of course, the idea costs, are all going to come in much more handy than Deus Vult and Tolerance of the True Faith. Though the Year of the Prestige is nice. Anyway, I hope I explained the difference between religious and humanist well. I hope you understand, the differences between the two and when you should take the two in general. And I hope this is a nice change from my last video where I kind of said that, quantity is better than quality in every way, which wasn't really my intention. It was just kind of an opinion piece on why I think quantity is better. But in this case, I just wanted to explain when you should take both of these because they're both very powerful idea groups. Most idea groups actually are pretty powerful when you use them in the right situation, which is something I haven't really touched on a lot when I've talked about idea groups before. So, in general, I prefer to take Humanist because of the way I play, because I like to rapid expand, play wide, get lots of provinces that are wrong culture and wrong religion. But in this campaign, as you can see, religious ideas has served me particularly well. I started as the Knights. I'm already at 1173 development by 1650, which is pretty awesome. So anyway, I hope you found this video entertaining and informative, and I'll see you guys on the next one.